Hey guys, I'm Froggy, and we have the man who needs no introduction, Justin, with us. Thanks for being with us, Justin.
Happy to be here.
All right, so we're just gonna get right into it, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, now that you've been both a hunter, and we heard all about that on the documentary, and a hider, what's more exciting for you?
Well, that's a great question. I spent 10 years looking for forest treasure. I enjoyed every minute of it. And even before forest treasure, there was other treasure hunts that I was involved with to certain degrees. Not that I ever found anything, but it's a very different perspective. I think what I like most about this is I'm able to incorporate all of the things that I think would be great in a treasure hunt into what I created. So if I were to go out and look for a treasure, this is what I would want. And I hope other people do too.
That's awesome. I'll say this as so now that you've done your time as a hunter and a hider, if you go back to doing more treasure hunts, looking for stuff, do you feel like you can think a little bit differently, get in the mind of a creator a little bit easier?
I think that's probably true. It's like anytime I would do a treasure hunt, like forests, there
Hmm.
was so much time spent in trying to get in his mindset and understand, you know, where he would hide something, why he would hide it there, and to try and piece that together. So, yeah, I don't know if that quite answers your question, but
Yeah, no, it does. It
uh,
does.
yeah.
Right on. Or here's a question. As you're creating the treasure hunts, how do you balance difficulty? Are you trying to make it just as hard as possible, or are you leaving like I'll put a little bit of low hanging stuff for someone to grab? If you're able to speak on that at all.
You know, I I think anybody could create an impossible treasure hunt. Like they could go out somewhere, and bury something or hide something super well and have such obscure clues that it would just never be found.
Right.
I actually think that's easier to do. Um, and so I think the right balance is how do you create something, especially in a vacuum where you can't talk to anybody else,
Right.
you do this all kind of all in your mind. uh, how do you ensure that it's approachable, but still challenging, but something that can actually be found? And that's been my big challenge. So I hope I've done it justice. I really don't know how long it's going to take. It could be over here. I don't know today. It could be another week. I really don't know how long it's going to take. I don't have any expectations around the length of the hunt, but I've designed it in a way where there are some easier things to find that will help you, and then there's also some things that are a little bit more challenging to discover as well. So I like to kind of think that that'll roll out in stages, but I mean
Mhm.
someone could just mow through it in no time also. I don't know.
Thank you for answering that. Let's see. So this is a big one that's publicly your big treasure hunt. Have you made any smaller hunts like for friends and family? Have you done something in the past? Maybe even all the way back to when you were a kid with your brother. Did you ever hide stuff around for him to find?
you know i I enjoyed treasure hunting so much when I was a kid. I would hide things for myself to find, and
Get out of
I
here.
kind of look back on that like that wasn't probably the brightest idea, but it's just like the act of discovery. And so my actually, I think I talk about this in my book a little bit, but my mom got me this treasure hunt game, and had these scrolls that you'd hide around the house, and it would lead you around to different locations, and I would just go and hide them. And then my friends would come over and we'd do it together, but I just kind of like be in the backdrop watching. So I guess that's probably as close to uh, close to what you're describing as what I got. But it was a fun experience.
Well, and I do remember the chapter where you're talking about like obviously Christmas gifts, and I think that's something that's probably most people's earliest recollections of a treasure hunt, like Christmas, looking for where your parents put the gifts at.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, here's a fun one. Uh, can we talk about Victoria Peak?
We can. What would you like to know about Victorio Peak?
So that chapter really, I mean, man, the spunk of a kid to sneak onto a military base and try to get a tour and sneak off. That's wild.
Well, it wasn't my probably my most shining moment, but it was just enthralling when I was a kid. I mean, I remember distinctly the first time I heard about it, and all the years that transpired after that, and just everything that went down, and going to the the Ovanos Family Partnership Convention
Right,
or
right.
meeting in boy, I think that was in Albuquerque. It was I couldn't think of a more exciting way to grow up around something like that. So it just absolutely captured my heart, and I think that's in part maybe why I decided to do this treasure hunt. Is I remember that feeling from my youth, and I hope
Mhm.
there are other people out there that can get that same feeling from what I put together. Not to say that it compares to Victorio Peak in any way, but it's something.
Well, have you have you moved on with your heart? Have you laid it to rest, or do you still have plans maybe to get back there? Do you still think there's something there to be found?
I'm not short on ideas.
Okay,
I
okay,
think
I
I
like that.
mentioned this at some point. I like to believe that there are alternate entrances to that cavern. I think there's enough evidence to
It
suggest
only
that
makes
there
sense
are.
for a big cavern like that to have multiple. Yeah,
Yeah. And so I've been working on another side project. I had shelved it for a
love it.
little while because I was doing this treasure hunt thing.
Right.
But I like to think that there are other entrances, and the way to discover those might be through bats. Each evening,
Ooh,
bats leave their shelter, which
right.
can be a cave, in search of food. And I actually got this idea when I was a kid because my parents took me to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico,
Mhm.
and it was right at nightfall. And my dad brought an umbrella, and I thought, this is so ridiculous. Like, what? It was, there's not a cloud in the sky, and I was embarrassed that he was bringing this
What's he
umbrella. I'm
doing?
like, Dad, what are you doing? And so as nightfall approached, he opens his umbrella and he's holding it there, and I was just mortified at the time. And then it was just like an explosion of bats coming out of the cave. And of course, with bats come guano, and it just kind of rained down, and he had the umbrella. It's like, wow, okay, that's pretty legit. But my point is, how this relates to the story is, you know, if you look on Doppler radar, you actually will see anomalies at night, and there are large bat colonies that are coming out of caves. And so
Mhm,
they're for weather, but you can actually use them to see large cave systems. And so I thought, if I could design something that's more localized,
mhm.
that you could say mount on a truck or a vehicle, and
Yeah,
you could
yeah,
take it from location to location, it's more sensitive but has a smaller range. Maybe at night you could actually detect some sort of small colony of bats exiting a cave system, that might technically be off of the range boundary of
yeah.
the White Sands Missile Range, and maybe you could find something there. I don't know.
The Beast version 3 or 4 will have
Yeah.
the radar on there.
Well, funny enough, I actually sold the Beast.
No, you let go of the Beast?
I did. I did actually. Yeah, I mean, just after after Tucker passed,
Mm,
I couldn't get in that truck anymore without just seeing him there, and
okay,
it
yeah,
just killed me. So anyhow, I ended up selling it to a really good guy, so
okay.
it's gone to a good home.
It's gone to a good home. Well, I look forward to staying close to your socials as the years go by and seeing if we can see something posted about Victoria Peak. That'll be cool coming up.
Another adventure.
All right. Now that we're talking about the book, I've got a few questions on certain stories in the book. You mind if we go into some of those?
Not at all. Let's do it.
All right. Okay. The first one for me, raccoons. Have you ever thought about owning a raccoon seriously since that day?
Well, I actually had a pet raccoon. I don't think I mentioned that in the book.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of a crazy story. I don't know. When I was a kid, just I was sleeping one night, and my dad woke me up and said, "Let's go." And I didn't know we were going, And it's my brother and I, and we hopped on our bikes there in 49ers Country Club in Tucson, and he took us to this location at the edge of the tree line, and there were apparently some baby raccoons that he knew of, and he decided he was going to get one. I can't really talk about the ethics of that. That's not. I
okay.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
debatable, but he ended up uh, getting two baby raccoons, and they came home to live with us, and we actually raised them. So I did have one.
That's awesome, man. What was the name? You remember?
Rascal.
Rascal, of
What else?
course.
I mean, there's
Of
not a
course.
better
What
name,
else?
right?
Have you ever read the book Where the Red Fern Grows?
I have.
That's always whenever I think of raccoons, I always think that was one of the I read it at an early age and had a really big impact on me.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I think of Tucker, I picture a bloodhound
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a resemblance there. Of course, Disney did the movie as well, but I always
yeah.
preferred the book.
Okay, here we go. When you drive today, and if you can't say because there might be law enforcement watching, do you still use the speedometer or do you trust your mile marker method?
Well, I think it's something ingrained in me by now. So I do find myself on the highway from time to time, checking the mile markers and the mile posts. So yeah, it happens.
Here's another one. This was another one of my top stories from the book. The your gift was like a Posey's Revenge at the gift store where the scents from all the candles got you. Are you still sensitive? Do you have a lot of candles in your house right now?
No, it's funny. There's a very distinctive smell from that candle, and every once in probably like 5 years, I'll catch a whiff
Uh-huh.
of it, and it immediately get nauseous, and I've just got to like run from the area. I don't know what the smell or the scent is, but it doesn't agree with my body for some reason.
All right. Note to self: candles is kryptonite. All right, we got that down. All right. Speaking of another incident here, in the story where you and Tucker, which thankfully he was okay, but where you got hit by the bike in Bellevue in I get the Seattle area. What happened with that? Did you ever find out who did it? Were there bystanders that watched it, or you remember?
No, it happened near nightfall, and it was over as quickly as it began. It was through and through a hit and run. We never figured out who that was.
Oh,
I think back then maybe today people would have like Ring doorbell cameras or something that might have
yeah.
caught something like that, but not back then. Yeah.
Do you still bike a lot, a decent amount?
I
You still
do. I
go?
mean, not nearly as much as I used to. I'm mainly more into hiking and backpacking and fishing and that sort of thing these days. But from time to time,
Okay. Oh, the next one we can go to fishing. Um, all right. So you mentioned a lot about fly fishing. Have you ever been offshore fishing?
I have a number of times, and it's almost never been a good ending for me. I get
No. What
violently
happened?
seasick, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
I think a few times off the coast of Hawaii, and then off the coast of Oregon a few times, and also down in Mexico as well. And each time it gets me.
So
you know,
fly fishing, you're on your own 2 feet. It's a little bit more stable. That's kind of that's the thing.
oh yeah, certainly, yeah. I mean, there was one particular incident at sea where um, this was actually off the coast of Hawaii. My dad had just caught some ono fish,
Okay.
and on board, it was just horrible to me at the time. Like they're cutting off pieces of this fish and eating it raw
Yeah.
on the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, the fish is basically still moving. Uh, Instant throw up. Like I just, that situation. No, I much prefer inland fishing, especially trout fishing.
Trout fish. Okay, trout. That's your go-to fish, trout.
It is, yes, yeah. One time in my youth, I fancied myself a bass fisherman, but I think the net result of that is that it's not for me. I'm more of a trout guy.
So I'm very ignorant to fly fishing. I've never been fly fishing. I've been offshore once or twice. I've done I guess the traditional reel a couple times. Fly fishing to me just seems really complicated. It just I don't know. It just it seems really tough.
I think it partially depends on what you kind of grew up with. It's like you try and learn, say, skiing as an adult versus, you see these little kids zipping up in the mountain or down the mountain all the time. And, I think some things are just kind of easier to pick up at a younger age. But I think oftentimes, I mean, there are advanced technicalities and technical issues with fly fishing, but, the basics of it is really not that bad. I think it is pretty approachable, but I can imagine how it can be frustrating for someone just starting out. I think it just takes the right guidance. That's all.
Is there a story with a bass that got away for a reason why you want to stick the trout, or it just came up empty a couple times?
No, when I was a kid, we went to Table Rock Lake in Missouri,
Okay.
and I was so excited about it because we were going to go bass fishing for the first time. And of course, I had read like 30 books on bass fishing, and I felt like, oh, I'm this bass fishing extraordinaire. Like it's going to go awesome. And so the morning of, my dad overslept, and I was just beside myself. And I came in, and of course, I was bawling my eyes out. I was probably like, I don't know, 9 or 10 at the time. I'm not sure. And he felt terrible. So he jumped up. He's like, no, no, we're going bass fishing. So, we went out on the boat and we spent all day. And actually, we were with one of my uncles who is actually a competitive bass fisherman.
Wow.
And we didn't get a single bite the whole day. I don't know. Just that first experience, for whatever reason, just kind of turned me off. I'm probably the world's worst bass fisherman.
All right, we're sticking the trout then. Okay, here's another big one. Hard hitting question right here. The story about the beano betrayal. Why did you eat all the beano? Why not just dump out the pills?
Well, it's the genius of youth. I had it in my mind that I should take the pills because, I didn't want any sort of flatulence issues later on in the
Okay,
evening. And
smart.
so it's like,
Okay, I
that's what
got you.
this is for. Like, why
Yeah,
not? It
if
was
one's
almost
good, a
gratuitous.
handful's better.
Yeah. So exactly. It was just like more of anything must be better, which clearly is not the case.
Yeah, I cracked up, and from the Discord channels, that's a fan favorite. Is that one?
Oh boy. Yeah. That's
Just so you know, people enjoy the imagery of you bending over in pain. So that's fan favorite. Just so
well,
you
I
know.
do what I can.
All right. So this one's more probably me than the community that wants to know. I served in the military. I really related, or I really found the story of your grandpa Wayne interesting, especially the stories you were telling about his time in the Big Red One, and then the wild thing about him crossing the Rincones with just like a knife in a canteen. Like, so you do talk a little bit about him and a little bit about that. Are there any stories that you remember that he told you that you can share with us here? Any either in the war, serving in that unit, or crossing the Rincones? Like, any stories he told about that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for your service. I didn't realize you'd been part of the military, so that's very cool. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stories. Most of them were from the time that he was a fish and game warden. In fact, actually, I think I mentioned it maybe in the book.
You do a couple times,
Yeah,
yeah.
he wrote his own memoir, and that is, boy, what is that called? Where in the hell did you come from? It's the ups and downs and ins and outs of being a game warden. And I think there's some pretty incredible stories in there. And some of them, he has a kind of a very matter of fact storytelling
Mm-hmm.
way about him. So, I knew him well, and I even struggled through that book. Just because it's I think a little dry reading, if you will. But yeah, I mean, there's some pretty incredible stories. Like when he was a fish and game warden, he was this was in southwestern Montana, and he was overlooking this ridge through binoculars, watching some fly fishermen, I think down in the valley, either that or some hunters. I don't
Mm-hmm.
recall which. And he bumped the manual shift lever in his vehicle while he was there, and he didn't notice it because he's looking through these binoculars.
Yeah.
And so the Jeep started slowly rolling forward, and it went over the embankment and down the mountainside. And of course, the binoculars were around a strap around his neck, and they
Yeah.
just beat him to hell as
Oh my God.
as the vehicle tumbled down to the bottom. And I think he was stuck down there for quite a while. And at some point, we're talking the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
Just serendipity that somebody was driving by and they happened to notice the tire tracks going
Mhm.
off the road, and they stopped and looked down there, and he hollered up to them, and it's the only reason I think he survived that incident. But there's a lot of actually stories like that in that book. At some point, I think I've considered doing a revised edition to kind of tighten it up and focus on some of the more interesting stuff. But yeah, there's a lot there.
Okay, I think I'll have to check that out. Someone did post a link to that earlier. digging into it, as the community does, digging into things, right? Are there any plans? So you mentioned about the revised edition possibly, but do you have any plans to do like a part two to Beyond the Map's Edge, or like another what would you call it, like an ancillary book or something?
Yeah, it's funny. My neighbor keeps telling me I need to do the unedited version of Beyond the Map's Edge, but I think that might be a little too politically incorrect. So I'm
Because
not.
I'm sure there was some stuff that your editor had to finagle a little bit or chop a little bit.
Oh well, the editor. I mean, Matt really saved that book. It was a deplorable mess before he got involved. I have a penchant for uh, similes and metaphors and a little bit of literary flourish, if you will, taken to the extreme. So I appreciate that he was able to kind of cull the herd there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm the world's most proficient author, so
Mhm.
I think I'd be loath to try and create something else. So I probably not, but stranger things have happened.
Well, hey, people enjoy it from what I mean. I agree, it's a pretty easy read. So whether you are the editor, both you guys can take credit for both that together. It's a pretty easy read.
Well, hey, and if you don't enjoy it, you get some kindling. I might have cost you 40 something dollars, but
Okay, so a couple more questions here because we're getting to the end of things. Looking back, looking back on this whole experience so far, we're still early into it, but looking back on your 90,000 journey to hide stuff with a broken tibia, looking back on the puzzles and all the effort you put into that, which are you more proud of? The final spot that you decided, or the puzzle itself?
wow.
If you were to sit back and think, like, you know what, like, that spot's just the best spot, or this puzzle's so, well crafted, like, is there one that takes precedence, one or the other?
I think I'm equally pleased with both.
Equally. Great
Yeah.
spot and a great puzzle.
Yeah. I think they're both. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with both.
Okay, I'm good. I'm hoping somebody hopefully it doesn't go decades. I don't want it to be found too soon. I want to I enjoy the build up. I enjoy this the suspense and everything. So
Well,
but
if there's
hopefully
any
when we do find it.
correlation between how long it takes for someone to craft a puzzle versus how long it takes someone to solve it, you might be in luck. I think Forrest spent like, what did he say, 10 years working on
Yeah.
that poem.
Yeah.
I came up with the bulk of that poem in about 4 to 6 hours. So, uh, you know, I don't know if that comparison helps anybody, but
Well, I wrote that
I didn't
down in a
spend
marker
years
and
on it.
circled it. And if I had a soundboard, that would be a soundboard section. Okay. As of a short question right here, as of today, this very moment, would you do it all over again if you go back to the start? Still enjoying the process?
I am. There's been some speed bumps along the way. I was happy to write the book. I'm not as I really didn't want to be in a position of actually selling it. It's like, go to Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore or something like that. I just think with some of the supply chain challenges, having to give people an avenue to purchase until that gets
Mhm.
resolved has been a little bit of a pain point for me, but I'm happy to do it. Like it needed to be done. So, beyond that, I think actually things have been running very smoothly so far. Of course, it's early, so knock on wood, but I'm very hopeful.
Okay, and the last question here is let's talk for a few seconds about what does the future hold for Mr. Posey, for Justin? I mean, are there any more Netflix documentaries on the road for anything else? Are you allowed to say that?
No, there's nothing in the pipeline. You know, I really do see myself transitioning to just being a bystander. I feel like I've said everything I want to say. I think that the announcements that have gone up have given a good round of initial clarity.
Mhm.
I don't plan to do a lot of, interviews or anything like that. It's more just it's out there. Enjoy it while it lasts, and have a good time. I think there's a few people that had reached out early that had asked, to do an interview, and yourself included, which I'm happy to oblige.
Appreciate
But I
it.
think,
Thank you.
yeah, I think after this initial round, my time in the spotlight is over. Just go and have a good time.
All right, so no plans for Good Morning America, Inside Edition, Justin on the spotlight. Not yet. Not at this moment.
No, there's no plans for anything like that. I mean, if there's some sort of media outlet that wants to, collaborate on something that I think would be genuinely useful, I can't imagine what that would be offhand. I'm certainly not opposed to it, but generally speaking, I've said what I want to say.
Yeah, I can see how it would get kind of tiring to hear the same 5 questions by everybody. Where is it at? Is it here? Can you tell us? You have to do it.
Oh, no, yeah, it's not that. And I think more anything, what's important is that all the information is kind of in one place. And I feel like the more interviews that happen, the more risk there is for that information to kind of just spread out all over the place.
Yeah.
And it just makes it harder. I think, just me being in the shoes of a searcher for so long, it's hard to keep on top of all that. It's like, oh, well, he said this over there and said that over there. I think at some point someone in the Forrest Fenn chase had created a word. Well, it was some sort of document that you could pay for, and it was all of the words from Forrest Fenn from like a multitude of interviews and just different sources. And it was great to have all that together, but the mere fact that someone had to create that, I think, is kind of problematic. So I prefer to avoid that.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for your time. And if anybody you want to know, his website is really great, treasure.quest. And like you said, he puts all the information right there. Thank you, Justin, for coming on.
Well, thank you, Froggy. Appreciate your time.
All right.
Now listen, all you treasure hunters, searching all around for plunder. Do you need some help to be your best? There's something that you're trying to find, but you're about to lose your mind. So come on, listen in to Estes Quest. Estes Quest.